Good morning and welcome. My name is Sarah Carlson, and I serve on the UUFA Board of Directors. I want to thank you all for being here today and extend a special welcome to any visitors and guests. After the service, please consider staying online for a virtual coffee hour and join us in conversation. We also hope that you will sign the virtual guest book on the UUFA website and sign up for our weekly newsletter to have someone talk with you further about our fellowship. The Board of Directors voted to extend the closure of the fellowship building indefinitely. We are continuing to monitor the pandemic information and have a regathering task force focused on reopening procedures for when it will be safer to be together in person. We're committed to providing a safe environment for all who call our fellowship home. And even though the building is closed, the fellowship remains open. Please read the weekly email and check the UUFA website for a complete schedule of various ways we can be connected throughout the week. So, on behalf of this caring, nurturing congregation, I welcome each and every one of you to this virtual and sacred space. Here, we invite you to an experience of transformation, hope, renewal, and connections, which may inspire you to understand life in new ways. Thank you for being here.
We begin our service with the ringing of the chime 3 times. The first to wake the chime, the second to open our minds, and the third to open our hearts.
In the world of the driven, let us be drawn in. Let your love be a given, let us be drawn in. To imagine, to dream, to create, to redeem, for the sake of the living, let us be drawn in.
We light this chalice in the hope that we can bring more light and less heat to a warming world, to replace the energy of fossil fuels with the energy of our shared purpose.
In the world of the driven, let us be drawn in. Let your love be a given, let us be drawn in. To imagine, to dream, to create, to redeem, for the sake of the living, let us be drawn in.
Our opening hymn today is For the Beauty of the Earth. This is a virtual choir arrangement by the River Road Unitarian Universalist Congregation and arranged by their choir director, Dr. Cliff Harden.
Of the sky and of
Our opening words today are by our youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman. This is Earthrise.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not. Just as we chose to go to the moon, we know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Right now, we have an opportunity with the planning that's going on in the city of Ames to come together and stand up as a community to do our part to end and reverse climate change. So our children's story today is about other communities, Native American communities, that have come together and have taken pipeline protests as a way to bring together issues of justice, issues of climate, and issues of clean air and land and water. The story is We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Good.
Hello friends, welcome to another reading time with Ring Around Renina. Our book today is called We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom, illustrated by Michaela Goad. Michaela Goad is my favorite Indigenous artist, especially because she illustrates children's books. In fact, I'm collecting all her books because she is just amazing. We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom, illustrated by Michaela Goad. Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land, spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. And of course, this snake is a metaphor of the Dakota Access Pipeline that happened in 2016. Unfortunately, it's still pushed through, so it's still poisoning the water right now. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. Over here, there's a beaver. I see some fish, turtle. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. The winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth. We are all related. Such a beautiful illustration over here. And look at all the animals. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face. Look, they're crying. Tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. The end. And over here, there's a glossary of the terms, and this is more information about what happened to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And here's a note from Michaela Goad, the illustrator. And it's cool too. You have a pledge over here, and then you can read this to your children or to your students, and then you can write your classroom name and then the date, because you pledge to protect the water. The end.
Jan Cook has a reading for us.
God, I unmuted that. Okay, here we go. Computers. Okay, so I'm Dan Cook, and our reading today is Teach Your Children. This has been attributed to Chief Seattle, who was chief of the Suquamish and Duwamish tribes of what is now the Northwestern United States. He was one of a multitude of indigenous people who from time immemorial through today have stood up for environmental justice. Teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the children of the earth. If men spit upon the ground, they spit upon themselves. This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the children of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.
Our offertory recipient for the month of March is Creative Visions, nonprofit in Des Moines. Creative Visions has enabled thousands of individuals to build stronger lives, stronger families, and stronger communities through its core program of services, which focus on self, family, and community betterment. You can give to Creative Visions as well as to support our ongoing work at the fellowship and our other partner organizations at uufaims.org/give. Thank you for your generosity. Now is a time in our service where we share the milestones in our lives, things that are bringing us joy or challenge or appreciation. If you have a milestone to share, please unmute your microphone, introduce yourself, and then let us know when you're done with your milestone by saying thank you for listening, so that we make sure not to overlap you. This is our time of sharing.
I'd like to share a milestone this morning. This is Sue Kirsten, and I'd like to share a joy. And it's about our concert last night, which went really well. We, that is the Generosity team, looked on this event as an experiment, which meant, of course, that we worried about all the things that could go wrong, all of which went right. Thanks to David Slade and his trio, to our host, Molly Helmers, and to Bradley, who supports us all the way. And a special thanks to every one of you who were able to come and to celebrate our congregation hanging together as a virtual community for an entire year. Really, that's awesome. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Zilber, and I also have a joy to share. Some of you may have watched Aaron Mann grow up in the fellowship. He's now 22 years old, and on the equinox yesterday, he asked his girlfriend of 2 years, Ting, to marry him. And she apparently had bugged him every day knowing it was coming for a month. So here's a picture of them. His hair is so long now, he wears it in a man bun. And Ting and him met at Case Western Reserve, and they've survived living for a year together during a pandemic. So his hair is even longer than that now, and that's from one of their formals. And Ting is lovely. She's caring, smart, fun, They both love growing plants and cooking Chinese food and spending time in nature. And there are zero details about any official event at this point, but I'm very happy that somebody else found Aaron as lovable as we do. And thank you, Fellowship, for helping him be that person. I'm finished. So, thank you.
There are no other milestones. Let's have a moment of silence. Keeping these milestones, as well as those left unspoken, in our hearts, and continue to support each other in the weeks ahead. It is good to be together. Next, we have a breathing meditation by Sarah Dan Jones and performed by Chelsea Musan at the UU Church of Elgin.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
The City of Ames is embarking on climate action planning, and to provide us with some context for that, we have a special guest this morning. Cassie Sawney is a passionate environmentalist. She obtained her BS in Conservation and Resource Studies with a focus in wildlife conservation and environmental policy from UC Berkeley. She then went on to the University of Oxford to receive her master's in Nature, Society, and Environmental Governance with a focus on climate law. Cassie now works as an outreach coordinator in the Energy and Community branch of the Green Iowa AmeriCorps, a statewide America service program that focuses on the environment. Welcome, Cassie.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Because I know last time people said I was a little quiet. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so let's get started. I won't reintroduce myself here, so let's jump right in and talk about first, why are we discussing this in this service at all? And the reason that kind of permeates all of this is because of climate justice. And climate justice is the concept that oftentimes the people who are most impacted by climate change are the people who've contributed the least and also have the least input into conversation around climate change. So equity demands that the needs of children, seniors, persons with disabilities, those with significant economic challenges, and marginalized communities be addressed. This is your children, your parents, your grandparents, the person down the block that who has a child who is disabled. And so it's really important to think about these people in the context of being part of our community, and really keeping in mind those needs of the people. And I was told that also this relates to a few of the principles, like the second principle for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and also respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So what does climate change mean for Ames specifically? The biggest thing is going to be increased variability in weather. So that's extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme rainfall, flooding, but also extreme drought. And along with this, you'll get decreased air and water quality, which leads to a lot of public health concerns. Further, as the climate changes, it'll become more hospitable for mosquitoes and ticks, which leads to increased risk of disease from those. There will also be increased challenges to food quality, for example, both due to flooding and drought, but also due to the climate becoming more hospitable to agricultural pests, which can prey on food and be really devastating. We'll also see increased infrastructure failures for extreme weather events. You can think, for example, of the derecho from last year. And just for some context, I think it's very important not just to focus on the economic cost of climate change, but it is important to note, since the city will need to be able to have the money for this, it's going to cost about $61 million per year to cope with climate change. And we're looking at about 25% reduced agricultural output, increased crime, greater mortality, and decreased labor productivity. So, kind of no matter how you look at this, the consequences are, whether you're looking in terms of health, in terms of monetary value, in terms of, people's well-being, it's, climate change for Ames, just like the rest of the world, is going to bring a lot of impacts. And this is just a brief graphic to show how much storm weather events have already increased, and how much is already costing us. And we can see then that if this is going to keep increasing, that this will only get worse and worse. So then the question becomes, what do we do about climate change? And the answer to this comes in the form of two things. The first of which is the 2015 Paris Agreement. In that, countries came together to aim to keep warming below a 2 degrees Celsius increase. Countries each had a nationally determined contribution, which basically means they set their own goals. And across the world, cities were seen as a really, really important part of meeting these goals. And as part of this, cities would need to reduce emissions from 26 to 28% from 2005 levels by 2025, and reduce emissions 80% from 2010 levels by 2050. However, in 2018, then came the IPCC report. And basically what they found is that half a degree of warming makes a really big difference. And so they recommended further stronger action to reduce greenhouse gases 45% below 2010 levels by 2030, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So the Paris Agreement set the basic goals and structure of our plan to take on climate change. And then the IPCC report essentially took it further and gave us stronger goals. So then the question becomes, how do we achieve these goals? And the answer is through a climate action plan, which is what Ames is about to embark on. So what is a climate action plan? A climate action plan, also known as a CAP, is a plan to address climate change in a given area. This can be as small as a school or as big as a country. In this case, it's a city. And it has two parts. The first part is mitigation, and that's anything that helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions and thus the intensity of climate change. And then the second part is adaptation. And adaptation helps us deal with predicted impacts of climate change. For example, how are we going to prepare for increased drought or increased flooding? How are we going to reinforce our buildings so that we don't see as much damage during storm events? The Climate Action Plan has 6 steps. So the first is the baseline inventory. And this is basically you need to know how much you're emitting now in order to be able to set goals for the future. So then the second step, once you know how much you're emitting, is to adopt a target and see what your goals are going to be. Mostly it's either going to be in line with the Paris Agreement or the IPCC report. The next step is to forecast emissions. So essentially you look at different scenarios and say, you know, if the city took X step, what would our emissions look like? What if we took Y? What if we took Z? And of course, it's not just going to be one strategy, but you want to look at all of them together. And this and the strategy selection are a really important part to implement climate justice, because it's very easy to just go kind of for the low hanging fruit. The easiest things, maybe energy efficiency, because it saves the city money and also helps. And climate justice and the needs of people who can't advocate for themselves can really get lost here. So once the strategy is selected, then you move on to funding implementation, and then you just have to keep monitoring and tracking your progress to make sure that you're staying on track. So AIMS is embarking on its CAP project. The start date is March 30th, 2021, so just about a week away. The completion date is October 1st, 2022, so just about a year and a half away, and no pause is expected during the summer months. And we'll discuss this a bit more at the end, but watch for opportunities for public engagement and public comment. So what has been done so far in AIMS? The first step has been the inventory. AIMS completed their greenhouse gas inventory and found they have about 1.1 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent generated in 2018. Now, the good news is population, jobs, and GDP increased while emissions declined 16.9% over 5 years. However, this decline was likely due to the city switching from using coal to natural gas, so it's not something that's going to keep happening naturally if we don't take further action. This graphic just shows you where the emissions are coming from most right now. It lets us have an idea of what we want to focus on. So we see electricity, natural gas, and coal make up some of the biggest contributors to AIMS emissions. This basically tells us, you know, it's worth more to focus on this than it is wastewater treatment or potable water, which make up such a small percentage. The next step is setting the goals. I won't read out all of these goals, but I will speak specifically to say that many cities in Iowa have already started to take action on climate change. And I work in Des Moines, and here we just passed a resolution to reduce emissions 45% by 2030, to reach net zero emissions by 2050, and to have community-wide 100% 24/7 electricity from carbon-free sources by 2035, which is a bit of a mouthful. But essentially, we're just looking to have carbon-free electricity available to everyone all the time by 2035. And it's not just in Iowa. Climate emergencies have been declared across the globe, both by cities that are bigger than AIMS, but also some that are AIMS' size and even smaller than AIMS. So this really puts into perspective that AIMS can do this, and their contribution is important. Step 3 is the last one that's been completed. AIMS only looked at a 2 degrees Celsius reduction goal, so that's why the graphic is 2 degrees Celsius, not 1.5. But this really shows, you know, you can see business as usual versus the 2 degrees Celsius goal by 2050 is going to require a lot of strong action. And you can imagine thus with a 1.5 degrees Celsius goal, how much even stronger the action would need to be. So finally, this brings us to what's next. The next step is, of course, to create the climate action plan, to look at what goals we want to select and what strategies we want to select to meet the goals of the climate action plan, and to really think about where the focus should be in reducing emissions. And again, this should be both in terms of what's most practically effective, so focusing on the sectors that are emitting the most emissions currently, but also keeping in mind climate justice and ensuring that, you know, for example, certain projects don't happen just in well-off neighborhoods instead of those that are less well-off, etc. And with that, I will turn it over to discuss the community input task and a little bit about a few events coming up on how you can participate.
Dan, is this my cue?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, as you can see here, our next slide shows you that the Ames City Council is going to create an input task force to help understand what the community wants to have happen in terms of our environmental efforts. And so please be aware of that. And if you have an inclination to be one of those people, or if you know someone you think should be considered for that task force, be ready to present that name when the city council comes to choosing who's going to be on that task force. So they're going to, as you can see, provide feedback and input and collect and communicate feedback and input from whatever their sector is. And there are many different segments of the community that they have identified that they want to specifically hear from. So you will be seeing that. We'll try to make that available to everybody in our congregation as that becomes available, probably through our weekly email. So there's going to be a panel discussion Wednesday, April the 14th. That's less than a month from now. And that, of course, will be by Zoom. I don't see here the Zoom address, but I am sure that that's another thing that we will make readily available to the people in the congregation. Now, here are some things that I have chosen from the Pale Blue Dots greenhouse gas inventory that they did for the city of Ames. You remember the first step that happens when you're creating and carrying through on a climate action plan is an inventory about where you are now. That's what the greenhouse gas inventory is. And if you want to read it, you can go to the City of Ames website and just put that in your search, greenhouse gas inventory, into your search. These are written very impersonally, but in every single one of them, there is something that you can do individually. For instance, reduce fossil fuel use within the city. You can figure out how to walk instead of drive to your next task. You can figure out how to change your light bulbs to have LED light bulbs. You can set, if you have a programmable dishwasher, you can set it so that it operates between midnight and 5 a.m. All of those things are little bitty things that you can do that actually, in the aggregate, really make a difference. Next slide. Transportation, here's another one. I was just talking about using your feet instead of your car. There are lots of other options, particularly here in Ames. We have a great public transit system. Consider using that. Consider getting out your bicycle. Consider, if you're looking for a new car, consider electric vehicles. Next, Dan. Solid waste. This is one that we have been putting a lot of inquiry into in the community. And the city has done a great job of creating ways that you can really help in this area. You can, for instance, separate out all your glass and put it in the yellow containers that you will find at major grocery stores. It's actually taken away and recycled. You can put your vegetable matter, either if you have a yard, you can create a compost heap at the back corner, or if you live in a place where you can't do that, consider using the city's joint vegetable waste recycling, and there is a place to place your recycling at the Arnold O. Chantland Resource Recovery Center. Next slide. Water and wastewater. This is a big one in the summertime. Consider having a lawn that you don't care about whether the grass
goes dormant in the summer. Just don't water it. That's excellent. Just little things like not leaving the faucet running when you're brushing your teeth. Believe it or not, if everybody in the whole city did that, it would make a difference. Next. Now, I've accumulated many different programs that are both associated with and outside the UU umbrella, I guess I would say. One of them you can see is UU the Vote. How does that make a difference in terms of our efforts toward the climate crisis, reducing the climate crisis? Well, the whole idea of UU the Vote is to make the issues that UUs feel concerned about front and center in terms of the people who are making the laws for us, both on the state level, local level, state level particularly, and the national level. We have a big problem with the statewide situation right now, but there are other ways that we can influence what's happening today. The Create Climate Justice and the Citizens Climate Lobby are, the Create Climate Justice is actually a big joint effort between the UU Ministry for Earth, the UUA Green Sanctuary Program, of which we have been a part in the past, and the UU UNO office. So you can see it's both national and international. The Citizens Climate Lobby is a group that was particularly formed to advocate for carbon dividends as a way to lower the amount of carbon that we put into the atmosphere. Climate mobilization approaches this whole effort on a crisis footing, getting people to think about this as an all-out World War II type approach. It considers anti-racism and anti-oppression as being integral to what it does. The next I have taken from the website, which is for the UU Ministry for Earth. You can see that it has a lot of things going on. Create Climate Justice there on the right, I just spoke about. They have a young adult network for climate justice. They have created an award-winning documentary that can be viewed in many different situations. So there are lots of things that we are doing as a national organization, as UUs as well. In addition to all these, of course, there are many other organizations that you can get involved in. And I am hoping that we can make some of this information available to you on our website. I'm going to talk with Bradley about that. So I hope that this is already a concern of yours. I know that it is for many, many people in our congregation. And I just like to end up with another quote from an Indigenous American, this from Black Elk. The Holy Land is everywhere. And of course, you recognize that that was, that quote appears in Peter Mayer's song that we are very familiar with and very fond of at the UU congregation. Everything is holy now. So thank you. Dan, back to you.
Got another Peter Mayer song here as our closing, Blue Boat Home.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Okay, no, that's not. I don't know what happened there, but make sure. Let's see. Weird. Okay. Something odd happening with the playback there. Thank you to Cassie for joining us today, and for all the other participants in our service. Mary Richards, Jane Reynolds, Jan Cook, Sam Wormley, Bradley Duckstein, and Jamila Jessen.
Below me I feel.
Okay, I do not know what is going on with this. Yeah, signs of, okay, what is happening here? Still having technical difficulties. Here we go. So as we spring for change, here's seeing some signs of spring around our community. Looking forward to spring unfolding in full and being able to get back into the building at some time of this year, hopefully. A lot of us have been enjoying weather warm enough to be out in nature. Others have been making use of the weather to get started on some spring cleaning. Here's the garage of a congregation member who would like to remain anonymous. And then yesterday was the spring equinox, which has kicked off a Spring for Change season of sacred activism for the UU Ministry for the Earth. So there's a lot of events going on in the coming months to be aware of. So now have a chance for some coffee and conversation in breakout rooms. And thank you all for joining us today.